Hi, this is Veronica with Sew It Seams, and welcome back to my studio. Today in the Dear Jane quilt, we are going to be working on block J3, which is also called Rick's volleyball net. At first, this block looks a little more complicated than it really is. First, we're going to look at that center section. If you see in Jane's quilt, it looks like there's a lot going on, but this is actually just one piece of fabric that has multiple different colors and designs in it. I know because I got a magnifying glass and I looked really close, and it's just, you can especially tell here the color just kind of bleeds from one to another. And this right here is just a color change in the fabric, same here. And then you can also see this fabric is used in little bits on the ends here. So this is just one piece of fabric. So the way that Brenda Papadakis had drafted out this block is the accurate way of doing it. So for this block, since I only really need the two fabrics, I am going to be using this pink fabric as my main focus fabric. And then I'm going to use my muslin for all of the background. In creating this block, I'm going to first look at this very center part of the block. And I think the easiest way that I'm going to do this is have a center square cut from my pink focus fabric, and then applique these little corners out of the muslin that I have. And then when we get to these ends, I'll just do a strip of the muslin and little strips of the color on either side, and we'll do that on all four sides. For the center portion of this block, I've cut out a center square out of the foundation fabric, and this is 4 inches square. I also made a template of the little corner curve pieces and have traced those and cut those out of my muslin. Now, when I'm appliquing these down, sometimes it can get a little tricky as far as if they're lined up properly. So what I've also done is drawn a very faint line. You may not be able to see it, but I just used a white marking pen, and I drew a line especially around these corners, because this is where it's going to line up with my edge of my template. I want it to be lined up really well, because the other parts that are going to be coming out on the other side are going to need to line up really well with these curve pieces as they're transitioning from the center part to the outer border part. Now that I have these lined up, I'm going to be appliquing these curve pieces down. I don't need to sew this part because those are going to be sewn into the seam, but this is the curve that I need to worry about. But I do want to make sure this is lining up properly. So I'm going to have my corner marked. I've got my pin here in the corner of my applique wedge here and in the corner of my block. And then I'm just going to rotate this and line it up so that the lines are even. Okay, so now this is in position, and I will applique this down, and I'm going to do that on all 4 corners. So I just, once again, am only going to stitch this outer curve. I don't need to stitch this part. The center portion of this block is complete. I've got the applique all done, and then I also trimmed away the excess of the foundation fabric that was on the back. That way we don't have that extra bulk underneath. Now we're going to be working on the parts that are on the outside here. And let's take a look at the book once again. When we take a look at this block, here is our center part, and we're going to be working on these side pieces here. And our muslin, or your background fabric, is they're going to be the same width as this piece here. Now I want this to match up onto my block so we have a really nice seam match here. So I'm going to measure my block. When I take my ruler and I measure, this section here is 7/8 of an inch. I'm measuring this one. It's also 7/8. This one is also 7/8 of an inch. This one is not quite 7/8 of an inch. So I'm going to be cutting a strip of fabric that is 1¼ inches, just because it'll be easier. And I'm going to mark the 7/8 of an inch so that it will line up perfectly with these little sections here. To create the 4 triangle units on this block, I'm going to start first with cutting my fabric. With the foundation fabric, I'm going to cut 2 squares that are 3 inches each, and then both of those squares I'm cutting on the diagonal. So each square will give me 2 of the triangles for one side. So with 2 squares, I'll get all 4 of those. And then for the section in the middle of those triangles, I need to cut my muslin fabric or your background fabric to about 2¼ inches by 1½. It doesn't have to be exact, but that's the size that I cut them. And if you remember on my block when I measured it, I needed 7/8 of an inch for the seam. So I have marked each of my rectangles so that this is 7/8 of an inch. So now what I'm going to do for each of these blocks is I will be lining up the sections and sewing triangle, rectangle, triangle, making sure that I have that seam allowance marked. The 4 corner units are now complete, and now we're going to attach them to each corner. And as you can see, these lines are going to line up really well. So I'm just laying those out. Now what I'm going to do is on the other side draw a 1/4 inch stitching line around this, and then attach the 2 opposite corners, press it, and then to the other 2 opposite corners and press that. I have 2 of the corners sewn on, and you can see that they're lining up really well here. So when you're going to be pinning your next one, make sure that when you're pinning them together that you are pinning right through so that those seams line up, and that will give you that really nice perfect line that goes straight across. So now I'm going to pin the other 2 and sew those, and we'll have all the parts together. All 4 corners are sewn on and the block is ready to be trimmed. To trim this block, we're going to line up this ruler so that my center diagonal lines are going straight through this center diagonal. And you can see on mine, it's just going right down the center. And in the middle, it's crossing there. So this is what I'm going to trim off. And there is our finished block all trimmed up. I hope you enjoyed going through this block J3, also called Rick's Volleyball Net, from the Dear Jane quilt. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. You can also like and subscribe to my channel. If you click that notification bell, you will be notified each time I upload a video, which is every Monday. If you have any questions, you can leave them below in the comments, or you can send me an email at soitseemscreations@outlook.com. This is Veronica Johnson with Sew It Seems, and I'll see you next time.